Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. We can move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is roll call. Jesse Clark, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Lamstad, are you present?
I'm
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
I'm present.
Councillor Franzen? Councillor Braybrook?
present.
Councillor Cadigan? For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CIO Treasurer. Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO. Adele Arbor, Planner. Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk, is present. Bianca, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but Terry so far has sounded a bit odd.
That's my daily thing.
I don't know how to politely say that. No, it just sounds like you're underwater. That's what it sounds like.
We're unplugged here.
Does that sound better?
1 second.
Sorry.
Peter, now?
How does that sound now?
Perfect, like you're back above water.
Okay. I'm swimming upstream. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. Trent Lake respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, thank you. We can move on now to item 1.4 of our agenda, which is employee service recognition. We have several people to recognize. So council recognizes the following employees for their years of service. We have Stephen Crowley for 5 years, Pierre Stewart for 5 years, we have Don Bowles for 10 years, we have Robert Carpenter for 10 years, and we have Susan Jacket for 10 years. Thank you very much to all of our employees for that. Excellent to hear that we have some long-standing people. Thank you. We can now move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest. I will remind anyone on council, if you have a pecuniary interest on an item on the agenda, please disclose it now or anytime during the meeting prior to speaking on the item you have an interest in. I'm seeing no hands. We can move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda as circulated. I see Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any conversation about the agenda? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can now move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is a little out of sequence normal, but this is how it was circulated for obvious reasons. I would entertain a motion now to go into closed. We have a mover is Councillor Cadigan and a seconder is Councillor Braybrook, and we are going into closed to discuss under the Ontario Municipal Act section 239(2) to discuss D, labor relations, employee negotiations, municipal employee, E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, Dudney, Trent Lakes concerned citizens litigation, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privileges, including communications necessary for that purpose, Dudney, Trent Lakes concerned citizen litigation. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going into closed. Okay, we are at section 4.2 of our agenda, which is rise from closed meeting. I would entertain a motion for same. Councillor Braybrook for a mover, Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are now back in our regular council meeting. We can move on to item number 5 of our agenda, which is business arising from the closed meeting. Item 5.1 is the adoption of the minutes from our closed meeting. Would anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover and Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We move on to item 6 of our agenda, which is adoption of minutes from item 6.1 is our regular council meeting of December 3rd, and 6.2 is our statutory public meeting from December the 3rd. Anybody would prepare to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to adopt them both.
Okay, and we have Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any conversation about those minutes? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 7 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. Item 7.1 is Environmental Advisory Committee. Item 7.2 is the Peterborough County OPP Detachment Board of December 2nd. And item 7.3 is the Committee of Adjustment and Appeals Committee from November the 5th. Anybody prepared to make a motion? Councillor Trent.
Motion to receive all three.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I say Councillor Cadigan. Any conversation about those 3 items? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Item 7.4 of our agenda, which is liaison reports for council boards and committees. Does anyone have anything to report? Seeing none, we can move on now to statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, which we have none today. So we can move on to item 9, which is business arising from that statutory public meeting that we didn't have, and we have none. We can move on now to presentations. Presentations 10.1 was Brent Martin, Senior Operations Manager, and Nick Larson, Director of Business and Assistant Management Standards, Ontario Clean Water Agency, are unable to attend at this time. So we will move on to item 11, which is 11.1 is delegations, which is Jonathan Steffler and Linda Post. They are unfortunately unable to attend at this time. So we can move on to item 12 of our agenda, which is staff reports. Item 12.1 is Public Works. Item 12.1.1 is Evan Grieger, our Director of Public Works. Would you like to speak to this item, please, Evan?
Absolutely. I'm gonna guess the one that's here, right? So anyways, thank you, Mayor Lamson, through you, Mayor, to members of council. Today before you is a follow-up report to the presentation that we received from Cattle in September. Before you, there are 4 recommendations. The highlights are those is creating a bicycle route in the area, and that is requested. Communicate with Peterborough County, the installation of a stop sign at Odening Park, and then as well as consulting with Peterborough County about funding for a little asphalt walkway that is a result from Lakehurst Road to the library. Cattle made a presentation in September of 2024, just in regards to active transportation, specifically looking at bicycle routes, options, and safety possibilities. Within, specifically, they're looking at the hamlet of Buckhorn, as well as some outside connections to the Kawartha Lake, or the Signature Park on 36, as well as a couple other small locations. So with my consultation through Peterborough County, reviewing of what possibilities we can do, as well as reviewing past discussions. As some of you are aware, Lakehurst Road was reconstructed in 2019, and through that project, there was consultation with the municipality regarding curbing, ramps, and things like that. And the results of the curbing are as a result of those discussions in 2019. And there's just, there's been different things that have happened throughout that area. The application of a paved boulevard. But as you can see in my report, I'm sure there'll be some discussion regarding it. There's some safety concerns of advising bicyclists to utilize that asphalt walkway. For example, when you're within the city of Peterborough or other city location, bicycles are not allowed on sidewalks. I believe that is a main safety issue because as a bicycle, especially coming down hills, you can get out of there a lot of speed. And on sidewalks, you have small children, people with strollers that, those don't really mix very well. So it was sort of a recommendation to ensure that the bicycles they can use the asphalt walkway, but not to push them to that. It's sort of a combination of using the roadway as well as in conjunction with the asphalt boulevard. I would not recommend making the asphalt boulevard a shared pathway due to the size of it, as well as that conflict with bicycles and pedestrians. There were some other things that went through, but like I said, I'm here to have a conversation, not just sort of give you the report looking for approval, but more have a conversation with council today.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Evan? Go ahead, Councillor France.
Is that common to have a stop sign when you're leaving the parking lot?
Thank you, Councillor France, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. It is there's different scenarios. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. It's to each their own. Public lots, you know, typically it's recommended that there isn't a stop sign. It's sort of just perceived when you're merging onto the road that you're supposed to stop before merging onto the road. However, I understand, like, it was one of those, I call it a low hanging fruit. They had a request for it. It's something that wouldn't cause a huge issue having a stop sign there. So it was something that, you know, we can do this to see if it would improve any safety issues in that area.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Franzen.
And then another question, comment. How much traffic are we talking about using bicycle?
Thank you, Councilor Franzen. Through you, Mayor Lamb. Unfortunately, the traffic on the bicycles, we don't have a number. You could do a traffic study where you're collecting traffic data. I do believe, and I would have to speak to Peterborough County, when you have the traffic counter, so that's the rubber hose on the road, they're becoming more specialized where they actually pick up, okay, so a car weighs this much, this is how much pressure it's going to send back to the unit. I am not sure, because when we did ours, we didn't do it for bicycles, but I'm not sure if you can pick up, say, a weight of a bicycle to say this is a bicycle going over to be actually traffic counted. But at this point, there is no count of bicycle traffic per se.
Okay, one more time.
Just one comment. I think bicycles are a form of recreation. I don't think that we have alternate transportation through bicycles. With the topography that we have in the rural area and the distances, I don't think anybody thinks I'm going to go shopping, I'll take my bicycle to Peterborough.
Yep.
Thank you for your thoughts, Councilor Franzen. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about Evan's report? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Lamb. So through you, I saw that there was a response back to you from cattle on some of these things, and I didn't know if you wanted to. I'm not going to bring up all the things they said, but I just wondered what the next step was in conversation, dialogue with them.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Mayor Lamb. I'm not 100% sure. It is a community group. It's not a committee of the municipality, so there's no clear direction to sort of have that conversation with it. It could be something that it could, you know, possibly have a meeting, and if they have those concerns, we can. I did see the letter. I could have a conversation with them. But like I said, it's not a committee of the municipality, so it's sort of one of those little more of a gray areas. But I am definitely open to conversations and maybe to sit down in the new year with them and say, you know, this is what my thoughts are. What are your sort of thoughts? And that's why at the end of the report, I sort of say we're looking forward to continuing to work. I do want to harbor positive relationships with these groups, but also have the mind of the road safety and things like that. Just to sort of build on Councilor Franzen's comment, you know, there is a slightly difference of comparing a Trent Lakes to like the city of Peterborough, or even some of those other municipalities that are right close to Peterborough. As you know, some people feel that they can bike from location to location, where it's a little tougher to bike from Baker Drive down to Buckhorn. I mean, it would be an interesting trip, to say the least. But no, I'm definitely open to have those liaison conversations with them, because I do believe they're a passionate group, and I think at the end of the day, I'm a public servant, so I want to be able to serve the public. So listen to their concerns, obviously not implement everything, and that's the result of this report, but, you know, just to listen to their perspective, because, you know, everybody's got a different perspective, and you can always learn from people.
So thank you, I appreciate that. And I think some residents don't understand that they provide input, not direction. It's a fine balance, and listening, but not committing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Emma. Okay, any other conversation?
Motion to receive.
Okay, there's some kind of, okay, there's some recommendations there.
Yeah, and follow recommendations made by staff.
Okay. I don't know. We'll ask for a seconder for that motion. I'm seeing Councilor Braber, go ahead. That's for a seconder. Any conversation on this item? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay. Thank you very much, Evan. We can move on now to item 12.2 of our agenda, which is recreation and facilities. 12.2.1, Dylan Kosh, our Director of Recreational Facilities, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've got actually up to date 3 reports regarding recommendations from the Open Spaces Master Plan. So bear with me on a few minutes of your time here. So first up, I've got the Trail Maintenance Best Practices document. It was recommendation TM4 from the Open Spaces Master Plan. The intent was to provide some guiding documents to the municipality for the future as it develops its trail network, to take proper care that, we're looking to invest, potentially big money into developing these trails, and we want to make sure they're in good condition for members of the public to use, for now or in the future. In researching these types of documents through other municipalities and levels of government and private organizations, we found that our current recreation maintenance policy aligns quite well with what a lot of others already have, given the criteria that are specified within the document, which I've listed there in the report, as well as frequencies assigned. So our recreation maintenance policy that Council approved a couple of years ago actually it breaks down our recreational assets into 4 different service levels, which we kind of use a priority matrix, so to speak, to assign it. So is it highly trafficked and very visible to the public? That becomes the service level 1, and versus the total opposite of the scale. If it's not used very often and it's not very visible to the public, it requires a lower amount of maintenance to keep it in a state that is reasonable. It balances how much a asset is used with, being fiscally responsible. So our recommendation is to consider that this Open Spaces Master Plan recommendation is complete by way of, we already have our recreation maintenance policy. If there's any further questions on that, I would be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dylan. Anyone have any questions of Dylan about our recreation maintenance policy? I'm seeing it's kind of covered over already, so it's documents that we've already done. Okay, I'm seeing no questions of you, Dylan. Is anyone prepared to make a motion in some form? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to receive the report and deem that the recommendation is now complete as stated in the Open Spaces Master Plan.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we can move on now to item 12.2.2 of our agenda, which is Dylan Kosh, our Director of Recreation and Facilities. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Our next report is regarding a public washroom strategy, another Open Spaces Master Plan recommendation to develop this. In the report, I've laid out currently how many units and how often they're serviced at our various locations, as well as the results of, we put out for about a couple months a survey, and we had 212 respondents, 96% of them identifying as Trent Lakes taxpayers, which surveyed the public on their feelings towards the public washrooms, their care, and potentially what they would like to see moving forward. I'm going to save Council the reading of all that. I hope you've all had the chance to review those comments and results from the survey. As we've experienced with many surveys, it's a small portion of our visitors and our ratepayers the same. I did find it was a good response overall in terms of a number compared to previous surveys, but you kind of have to take it what you will as a sample size. But from this, we did conclude some steps moving forward for a public washroom strategy. So I've divided it into 4 terms: an immediate term, a short term, mid-term, and long term. At the last page of the strategy, you can see the timelines for those. Immediate being next year, You know, given that we've already had our budget, first budget meeting of the year, and we're kind of we're at where we're at with that, we wanted to ensure that what we do next year won't have any sort of large impact to the tax base and the potential levy that we're looking at so far. So what we're looking to improve next year is really focus in on peak times and developing in signage and educational materials, which we can accommodate all in-house, to improve awareness on, you know, where the washrooms are, acceptable uses, you know, which to some may seem self-explanatory, but to our staff who regularly inspect them is not so much. So, you know, it's right now that next year's goal is to improve on what we're doing and see if that result improves public perception. Part of next year will be to solicit feedback from visitors actually on site, the people who are using it. Moving into 26, looking to do maybe some pilot programs. You know, you guys have seen the wedding trailers, composting units such as the Mississauga takeout, you know, testing our feet in the water with units such as that before we get into looking at potentially purchasing more permanent washrooms and evaluating the feasibility of those. So it gives us some time to ease our way into the pool, so to speak, without biting off more than we can chew, because it is a big capital investment and a big staff investment to start looking into public washrooms, because we'd be going from having contractors to having staff doing all that cleaning. So we kind of certainly want to ease our way in and hope we can make a positive impact on the public perception of our recreational sites and our public washrooms at them. If there's any questions on that report, I would again be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Dylan Tosh. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Dylan about that report? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Luncheon. Thanks, Dylan. I kind of reading between the lines, it sounds like Parks Canada is not adequately providing sufficient washroom amenities. And it sounds like we're kind of picking up the slack on that, which I'm not sure we should be. So could you just elaborate a little more on that? And if we need to work with Parks Canada going forward?
Sure. Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Armstrong. There were a couple comments. I wouldn't say it was overwhelming by any means in the survey. I did unfortunately read through all 212 responses, but there certainly were a few, and it's to come mostly from boaters passing through, coming to the locks, and after, I can't remember off the top of my head the time of day, but it probably would align with what the staff are available on site at the locks, that the public washrooms were no longer available. So yes, that, you know, that does create a stress on what is available. Granted, we don't have anything down that end of town. Our nearest public washroom would be at Odenang Park, currently placed up on the John Street side. And without having any sort of maps or directional signage in town right now for that, people might not necessarily who've docked in the locks know that they're there. Certainly a conversation. I do have the contact for the lockmaster actually that I met up with this summer. So we can certainly reach out and you know, in the early 2025 season and see what can be done, you know, to make it more available or increase some communication to let the public know what's available in the area.
Okay, thank you very much, Dylan, for your answer. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? See, Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Make motion to receive and to that council approve the strategy of the washroom.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on now to item 12.2.3 of our agenda, and I'm not going to introduce you this time. Dylan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last but not least of our three reports today is the Trails Design and Construction Strategy. Again, we reviewed other municipalities' plans. Again, the general theme being They set out a type of trail and everyone kind of calls them different things. Maybe it's a primary and a secondary. You know, we've chosen nature trail, multi-use trail, sidewalk, paved shoulder, and on-road route. For ours, as those were basically verbatim what was in the open spaces master plan. We consulted with the Director of Public Works and Director of Emergency Services on this one as well to get their feedback. Obviously, public safety is very important. And given that 3 of those trail types involve our public works infrastructure, that is another key individual that we wanted to ensure we consulted. So we have outlined in the strategy some high level specifications, and I went with high level because, as Councillor Franzen alluded to earlier, is we have quite the variety of topography in our municipality. We might be on rock, we might be on swamp, there might be environmental impact questions, there might be, we're on a public roadway. We wanted to keep it high level, and it's kind of something to basically describe a type of trail when we're looking at it. If we're looking for design or formal consultation, it sets kind of a slightly narrower way of looking at a trail before we get into, formally designing and developing it. So that's in there. We speak to signage, what type of furniture would be there, whether there be a trailhead, what kind of lighting we would have. And in any of our trails, I'm using air quotes from behind the computer screen here, trails that are on roads, for the most part, because this is part of a public highway, is that we've left most of those requirements up to being in accordance with public works construction standards. The only real specifications that we indicated there was to have a clearing buffers for vegetation above and to the side of those things. And, I believe that public works policies on those probably greatly exceed what has been specified here as it is. So if there's any questions on that, we would be happy to hear them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dylan. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding to this item? I'm seeing none, Dylan. You must have a fantastic report. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Braver. Go ahead.
I'll make a comment before the motion is out there.
Yep, go
I
ahead.
just want to thanks very much, Dylan, for your 3 reports here. I know a lot of work went into it, and specifically for the ongoing open spaces master plan. So thank you for that. And I would like to make a motion to receive and that council approves the trails design and construction strategy.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for the seconder. Any further conversation in regards to this item? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Dylan.
Thank you, Council.
And I think I must apologize to Evan Greer. I don't know if I introduced you with your position or not. My apologies, Director of Public Works. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item 12.3 of our agenda, which is fire and emergency services. We have none. Item 12.4 of our agenda, which is building and planning. Item 12.4.1 is Adele Arbor, our planner. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, this report identifies that the municipality is in receipt of an appeal to council's decision to deny zoning bylaw amendment 24-20 for the property municipally known as 2001 Crystal Lake Road. The municipality will be represented at the OLT by Laura Dean of Airden Bearless and Chris Jones, our external planning consultant. It's being recommended that council receive the report from the planner regarding the appeal received to zoning bylaw amendment file number 24-20 for information purposes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Adele. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions? I'm seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lambshead. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but any idea when this will actually be heard by the Ontario Land Tribunal? Are we like
To you, Mayor.
out?
Through you, Mayor Lambshead. No, I'm not certain when this will be heard. I know it'll be in the new year sometime, but hopefully it'll be in the spring. I'm hoping. I don't know how backlogged they are, but we did get our submission in within the 15 days of receiving the notice of the last day of appeal. So everything's in, and hopefully we'll hear very shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele. Okay. Any further comments? Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Motion to receive the report.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Adele. So now we can move on to item 12.5 of our agenda, which is finance, and 12.5.1 is Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, and through you. Before you is the accounts payable for November. You will see that about 94% of the payments are electronic. So just for your information, and if you have any questions, we can certainly answer those if we are
Okay.
able.
Thank you very much, Donna. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions for Donna regarding this item? I'm sure we have lots of questions for you, just not about this item. Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, there was a dome for 300, just over 300,000. Is that our new sand dome? Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Interest of
Thank you,
public.
Councillor Cadigan, through you, Mayor Lambshead. Yes, that was a new sand dome, was completed mid-November. It's actually quite a lovely structure if you guys want to go take a swing by. The soffit fascia has all been completed, the electrical work, so it's working well. Guys are quite happy with it. Be able to get the loader in. The old dome, they couldn't actually back the truck into the dome. They can now do that. And even when they're loading the dome, the company that loaded the dome made the comment how nice this was to be able to get the stacker in and out, where the other ones are kind of snaggling it and stuff like that. So yes, that was for the dome, and we are quite happy with their dome.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Franz, go
Motion
ahead.
to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to item 12.6 of our agenda, which is administration. We have none. Item 12.7 of our agenda is corporate service, and 12.7.1 is Bianca Dragicevic, our deputy clerk. Would you like to speak to this item, please, Bianca?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. Before you are the council expenses submitted for the month of November and the remainder of September and October for council's authorization. Council expenses were also submitted by Councillor Cadigan for the month of June, July, and August. However, in accordance with the council conferences and expense claim policy, expenses received outside of the 60-day submission period shall not be paid. Should council wish to waive this provision, a separate resolution will need to be passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bianca. Does anyone here have any comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Is anyone here ready to make a motion? Seeing none. Councillor Franz.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, now I don't know.
And I know we need a special
Okay.
motion for Joe. Should that be done in two separate motions or in
I
one
think it probably
motion?
should be in two separate motions, yes. The motion to approve as circulated.
Yeah, circulate.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, now, did you
I'd
want
like
to
to
make?
make a further motion to
Okay.
accept the payments in arrear, 2 months in arrear, I believe,
Okay,
to Councillor Cadigan.
anyone willing to second that motion? I see Councillor Braybert for a seconder. Any further conversation? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just the conversation is, I think it's unfair to our finance manager for these to come in so late. And I kind of looking at you, Mayor Lambshead, as well as Councillor Cadigan.
You'll be talking to me about this in the.
I am. So I appreciate the fact that we've caught up and quarterly seems to me a reasonable amount of time, although that's not in our policy. So we should perhaps look at that. But I just want to make the point that we are all accountable for submitting our expense claims on time. And it's a minor administrative thing that we all hate doing, but we pay our bills, so we should submit our claims. So thus ended the lecture.
Thank you for the lecture. I think Revenue Canada would have a different opinion than you.
Doesn't matter, our policy is our
ahead.
policy.
Okay, and we'll call, any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on now to item 12.7.2 of our agenda, which is Jessie Clark, our Director of Corporate Services and Clerk. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead, at the May 21st meeting of council deferred the application from Jonathan Seflar and Linda Post until consultation with Fourth Anishinaabe Council. The Fourth Anishinaabe has communicated its commitment to securing any land that may become available to them, regardless of its size or zoning, as part of reconciliation efforts. Therefore, they do not support the sale or acquisition of the lands to any other owner except for themselves. While the applicants were unable to provide a delegation today, they are still interested in pursuing the purchase of this land. So due to this, council could opt to defer this item to see if the applicants are able to provide a delegation at the January 14th meeting. While Fourth Anishinaabe have not expressed that there is an existing use on the property, communication has indicated that this land is part of their ancestral territory. Generally, unopened road allowances are only sold to property owners that abut the unopened road allowance. And as the Fourth Anishinaabe do not own land abutting this unopened road allowance, the sale to them is not supported. And at this time, staff are recommending the municipality not proceed with the sale of this portion of the unopened road allowance.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessie Clark. Anyone have any comments or questions? Or Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Through you, I was just curious as to whether there'd be any, or how the applicants would approach, if we did defer it for a delegation. I don't know whether they're going to enter into negotiations with the Fourth Anishinaabe, so I don't know whether deferring it would move it forward any further if Fourth Anishinaabe have clearly stated their intentions. Just a comment.
Okay. Any other comments? I just think I have no issues with deferring it because we're here to listen to the public and they would like to have their voice, so I have no issues with that. Councillor Franzen, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to defer.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Braber for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay. Thank you very much. We can move on now to item 13 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. Item 13.1, Galway Hall Board minutes. Item 13.2 is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, additional residential units. Item 13.3 is Peterborough Public Health. And item 4 is Citizens for Alternative Transportation in Trent Lakes. Does anybody want to speak to one of those items or any one of those items, or we can receive them all at the same time?
I just wanted to speak briefly on the item for the Galway Hall Board.
Okay, please go ahead. That's item number 1.
Just that the Hall Board made the decision that they were going to have intermittent terms. Some members, 1-year term, 2-year term, 3-year term, so that we have continuity and can attract new members. So I think that was a wise idea. It's important to keep continuity to these kinds of boards.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Councillor Franzen. Okay. Are you prepared to make a motion? Anyone?
I'll make a motion to receive all 4 pieces of correspondence.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any further conversation about any of these items? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 14 of my agenda, which is correspondence for action. Would anyone like to speak to any of those items, or are we prepared to make a motion? I'm seeing Councillor Braber. Go ahead.
I motion to receive all 4.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any further conversation about those 4 items? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. And now we can move on to item 15 of our agenda, which is bylaws. Item 15.1 is bylaws on our agenda memorandum. Jesse Clark, our clerk, could you please speak to this item?
Thank you. Through you, there were 2 bylaws on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or public meeting. The first is 2024-97, a bylaw to authorize borrowing for the Buckhorn Fire Hall Public Works Building. And 2024-98 is a bylaw to appoint council members to the Committee of Adjustment Appeals Committee, being Councillor Franzen and Mayor Lansing.
Okay. Okay, item 15.2 is the borrowing bylaw. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I see our CAO treasurer, Donna Taggart. Please speak to this item.
Thank you, and through you, I would ask that this bylaw be deferred at this time, please.
Okay. Is anyone prepared to make that motion? See Councillor Braybrick for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay. We can move on to item 15.3, which is appointment of council members to Committee of Adjustment and Appeals Committee. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Braybrick.
Motion approved.
And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any further conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can go to item 16 of our agenda, which is business arising out of a previous meeting. Does anyone have any business arising out of a previous meeting? Okay, and all I can say is I think Councillor Franzen and myself and Rachel Stark had a beautiful adventure in the brand new facility up on 49. Thank you, Evan Grieger, for the tour. Not really a meeting, I know, but. Okay, any other business arising? I'm seeing none. I will go on to item 17 of our agenda, which is notice of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion to bring forward? I'm seeing none. Item 18, which is an information item. That's possibly where I should have put that. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, just one information item. I attended the music concert at the Galway Hall. It was well attended, and council was thanked for making that facility available to that group. They're very appreciative.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any other Councillor Braybrick, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I just want to extend happy holiday wishes and all the best to all our residents and the municipality.
Thank you very much. And I think we're all in agreement on that. Happy holidays and enjoy your festive season in whichever way you choose safely. Okay, any other information items? I just want to mention that Councillor Franzen has now celebrated 10 years on Kawartha Conservation, and thank you very much for doing that. It shows your passion for Trent Lakes. Thank you, Councillor Franzen. Okay, I'm seeing no more hands. I will go on to item 19 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the confirming bylaw. Item 19.1 is the confirming bylaw. I see Councillor Cadigan for a mover. And Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any conversation about the confirming bylaw? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Franzen for a mover. Mayor Lamshead for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much to staff. Thank you very much, council. Thank you very much to everyone who attended.